She was the face that defined an era cold, beautiful, unreachable. They called her the divine Garbo. Men loved her. Women worshipped her. And then, she vanished. At the height of her fame, Greta Garbo, the most mysterious woman in Hollywood, walked away, no farewell, no scandal, no explanation. One day, she was on every screen in the world. The next, she was gone. But behind her haunting eyes and perfect stillness was a woman suffocating in silence. She never smiled for the cameras. She hated interviews. She told directors, "I want to be alone." But was it solitude she craved or escape? Because Greta Garbo's life was built on illusion. Her accent, her beauty, her mystery, all carefully curated by the studio to make her untouchable. They called her ice, but inside, she burned with loneliness. She had lovers, men and women, but trusted no one. She built walls so high that even her fame couldn't climb them. And when the golden age of Hollywood demanded she speak, when silent films gave way to sound, Garbo's voice stunned audiences. It was deep, soft, magnetic, but to her, it was another chain. Every word, every headline, every photo chipped away at the quiet she lived for. So one day, she simply stopped. No retirement tour, no announcement, no final film. She left fame behind as if it were a costume that no longer fit, and for the rest of her life, she never returned. The question that haunted Hollywood for decades wasn't why Greta Garbo left, but what did she know about fame that no one else dared to understand? Before she became the mystery of Hollywood, she was Greta Lovisa Gustafsson, born in 1,905 inches, the cold gray streets of Stockholm, Sweden. Her family was poor. Her father, a janitor, often unemployed. Her mother worked in a factory, returning home each night covered in dust and silence. They lived in a single room, with no heat in the winter, no privacy, and no future. Greta was quiet, painfully quiet. Her teachers said she spoke like a whisper that wanted to vanish. She didn't play with other children. She watched them, studying their movements the way an actress studies a role. Even then, she seemed to exist halfway between reality and dream. When she was 14, her father fell ill and died, leaving her with a grief she would carry forever. She dropped out of school and found work as a clerk, then as a shop girl at a department store. There, she was asked to model hats for catalog photographs. That was the first time anyone noticed her face, the perfect symmetry, the distant eyes, the air of melancholy that made her seem carved from something ancient. Those photographs changed everything. A film director in Sweden saw them and cast her in a small advertising short. The camera adored her. It wasn't just beauty, it was presence. Greta didn't perform emotion, she contained it, letting silence speak louder than words. In 1924, she was accepted into the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm, the same school that had trained Ingrid Bergman years later. Her talent was unmistakable, but her shyness made her a puzzle even to her teachers. She rarely spoke in class, yet on stage, she could command attention with a single glance. That paradox, distance and power, would define her forever. Soon, Swedish director Moritz Stiller took her under his wing. He renamed her Greta Garbo and became her mentor, teacher, and perhaps something more. He taught her how to hold still in front of the camera, how to turn restraint into magnetism. He once told her, "You don't need to move to be seen." When Stiller was invited to Hollywood by MGM, he brought Garbo with him. It was 1925, and America had never seen anyone like her, statuesque, reserved, foreign, and somehow both fragile and untouchable. At first, MGM didn't know what to do with her. Her accent was thick. Her manner was strange. But when they saw the rushes from her first film, Torrent 1926, they were stunned. The audience couldn't look away. Even when she did nothing, she commanded the screen. Soon she was a sensation, the Swedish Sphinx, the woman who wouldn't smile. Hollywood adored her because they couldn't understand her. She didn't give interviews. She refused premieres. She hated publicity. In a world that demanded exposure, Garbo gave them mystery, and the mystery made her immortal. But with every role, every camera flash, every forced smile, she withdrew further. The more they wanted of her, the less she wanted of them. And when she finally spoke, when silent films gave way to sound, her first words were prophetic. "Give me a whiskey, ginger ale on the side, and don't be stingy, baby." The world swooned. But Greta Garbo wasn't celebrating her voice. She was already plotting her escape. By the late 1922, Greta Garbo had become something more than a movie star. She was an obsession. Audiences didn't just watch her, they studied her. Her face, pale, remote, and magnetic, filled the screens of the silent era with a kind of hypnotic power no one had ever seen before. When Flesh and the Devil, 1926 premiered, critics called it a symphony of glances. Every look between Garbo and her co-star John Gilbert burned like a secret. Off-screen, it wasn't acting, they were in love. Their affair scandalized Hollywood. Garbo, the mysterious European actress who claimed to hate romance, and Gilbert, the studio's golden boy. MGM saw their chemistry and demanded sequels. But Garbo wanted more than passion, she wanted control. When the studio ordered her to marry Gilbert for publicity, she refused. She didn't belong to anyone. That was the first and last time a woman ever told Louis B. Mayer no and kept her career. Her defiance made her dangerous, and the danger made her legendary. Then came Anna Christie, 1930, her first talking picture. The entire world held its breath to hear her voice. When she appeared in shadow and spoke her first line, "Gimme a whiskey," it was like cinema had been reborn. Her Swedish accent, husky and cold, only added to her allure. Audiences didn't just love her, they were mesmerized. Throughout the 1930 seconds, Garbo reigned as Hollywood's highest-paid actress, starring in Mata Hari, Grand Hotel, Queen Christina, and Camille. She played queens, courtesans, spies, women who ruled the world and then died of love. It was art imitating life. But behind her elegant calm, Garbo was suffocating. She hated the constant publicity, the staged photos, the interviews that reduced her to a headline. She lived in hotels, rarely saw friends, and often disappeared for weeks without telling anyone where she went. Even her lovers, men and women alike, said they never truly knew her. The world's most desired woman was also its loneliest. Then, as the 1940 seconds began, something shifted. Her latest films underperformed. Her silence, once mysterious, was now mocked as arrogance. The same press that once called her divine began calling her difficult. But Garbo didn't care. She was tired of pretending to be the thing the world wanted. In 1941, after finishing Two-Faced Woman, a film she hated, she walked off the set and never returned. No press release, no farewell party, no last interview. The studio waited for her to change her mind. She never did. At just 36 years old, the greatest actress in the world disappeared. For decades, the world searched for her in rumors, in photographs, in the faces of other actresses, trying to imitate her stillness. But she never came back. Not for fame, not for nostalgia, not for anyone. Greta Garbo had done the one thing no Hollywood star had ever done. She walked away at the top. And in doing so, she became eternal. After she left Hollywood, Greta Garbo became her own myth. No farewell speech, no scandal, just silence. For a world obsessed with beauty and fame, her disappearance was incomprehensible. To Garbo, it was liberation. She moved to New York City under her real name, Greta Gustafsson, and bought an apartment overlooking the East River. There, she lived quietly for nearly 50 years, unseen, unheard, untouched. She never married, never returned to film, never gave another interview. But the solitude she sought was not peace, it was armor. Garbo had loved deeply, though she rarely admitted it. Her most passionate relationship was with Mercedes D'Acosta, a writer and socialite known for her affairs with Hollywood's most beautiful women, including Marlene Dietrich. Their letters, later revealed, burned with longing and frustration. Garbo would write, "You mean too much to me. I cannot be weak with you." Their bond was real, but Garbo's fear of exposure was stronger. In an era when same-sex love was forbidden, she hid behind her mask of mystery, a performance far more exhausting than any role she ever played. Even her friendship with John Gilbert, the man who adored her to the end, was shadowed by regret. He died young, and Garbo never attended his funeral. She sent flowers, white orchids, and said nothing. Her silence was her language. As years passed, the world refused to let her go. Photographers stalked her on Manhattan streets, hoping for a glimpse. Sometimes, she'd be spotted in oversized sunglasses and scarves, walking briskly alone. Each photo became a global headline. Garbo Lives. She hated it. When asked once why she shunned the spotlight, she answered simply, "I was never comfortable being looked at. People think I am mysterious, but I am only shy." But those who knew her best, a handful of close friends, saw something deeper. Behind her, cool detachment, was a woman haunted by the life she had escaped. She watched her old films late at night, whispering the lines along with her younger self. She would pause the screen, stare at her own face, and say softly, "She is gone." Fame had made her immortal, but it had also stolen her humanity. And even in solitude, she could never escape the echo of the world that once worshipped her. She died in 1990, at the age of 84, alone in her apartment, surrounded by paintings, silence, and secrets. She left behind no memoirs, no confessions, no final words, just a life that refused to explain itself. And maybe that was her final masterpiece. Because in a world where every star burns out trying to be seen, Greta Garbo's greatest act was to disappear and remain unforgettable. From this channel's perspective, Greta Garbo wasn't a recluse. She was a revolutionary, the only actress in Hollywood who truly understood the trap of being seen. She arrived in an era when women were treated like living ornaments, groomed, photographed, and consumed until there was nothing left to give. But Garbo didn't break under that system. She outsmarted it. While others spent their lives chasing fame, she mastered the art of disappearing with dignity. She didn't fade away because she was forgotten. She chose to fade, and by doing so, she became eternal. Her retreat was not cowardice, it was clarity. Garbo saw what fame really was, a mirror that only reflects what people want to see, and she refused to live inside that reflection. To her, silence was power. Mystery was protection. She turned distance into allure, a kind of quiet rebellion against the world's demand for confession. Even today, Hollywood still doesn't know what to do with a woman like her. A woman who doesn't explain herself, who doesn't beg to be loved, who doesn't perform her pain for sympathy. Greta Garbo was the first celebrity to say, "Enough." The first to prove that the loudest act of resistance can be absolute silence. Her legacy isn't just in the films Camille, Queen Christina, Grand Hotel, but in the space she left behind. That void, that absence, that deliberate mystery. She taught generations of stars that you don't need to die young to become myth. You can simply walk away before the world consumes you. When Garbo left the screen, audiences mourned. But what they didn't realize was that she had already given them everything she had to give. What remained was hers, her solitude, her secrets, her soul. And perhaps that's what true freedom looks like. Not fame, not applause, but the quiet power of being unknown in a world that worships exposure. Garbo didn't need to stay to prove her greatness. Her absence proved it for her. She was the woman who vanished, and in doing so, became the only star who never truly fell. In the end, Greta Garbo became what she always wanted to be, untouchable. Not a goddess, not a ghost, just a woman who refused to be consumed by the world's gaze. She once said, "I want to be alone." But maybe she didn't mean solitude. Maybe she meant freedom, the right to exist without performance, to breathe without a camera watching, to live without needing to explain. In her quiet New York apartment, surrounded by art and silence, she watched the city move below her window, millions of people chasing what she had long escaped. Fame, attention, validation. But Garbo had already seen what waited at the end of that chase: emptiness, disguised as applause, and so she chose stillness. While the world aged around her, her image on screen remained eternal, frozen, flawless, haunting. She became the one thing Hollywood could never create again, a mystery that time couldn't solve. No scandal, no comeback, no downfall, just an elegant vanishing act. When she died, there were no headlines big enough to capture what she represented, the last true enigma of cinema. Even now, her silence echoes louder than any voice that followed. Because in her disappearance, she told us the most uncomfortable truth of all. That fame doesn't give you immortality. Disappearing does. The camera adored her. The world longed for her. But in the end, Greta Garbo belonged to no one, and that is why she remains unforgettable. Some stars shine until they burn out. Others simply turn off the light, and the darkness becomes their legend. Some stories were never meant to be known. But now,